So one of the things I've loved doing for years and years, been a tradition of mine for a long time now, is at the holiday season, what I like to do is I like to teach on Christmas movies that we like to watch and show you how they either tie into our faith or maybe don't tie into our faith. And I love to help us think about Christmas in a different way using movies. And so this year, the movie that I've chosen for this Sunday is this one, Miracle on 34th Street. So you ever see this movie? There's two versions of it. There's an old black and white that's really good too, and then this one, which is a little, I saw this one first, so I tend to like it a little bit better. But if you don't know it, it's a story of this big department store in New York called Kohl's, not our K-O-H-L, like Wisconsin Kohl's, it's spelled differently, and it's fictional. And they hire this guy to be Santa Claus for them, and what they discover later is that he actually believes he is the real Santa Claus. So he thinks he's Santa. And of course that's met with a lot of different skepticism, and they put him in their store and he starts doing what Santas do, you know, talking to kids about presents and toys. And the story really revolves around these two people. So the mom is the one that actually hired this guy, and then that's her daughter. She's a single parent and she's raising her daughter alone, and the daughter starts to believe, hey, maybe, just maybe, he is really Santa Claus. Just maybe. The mom, of course, doesn't believe that. And it's a movie about faith. What do you believe? Is he Santa? Is he not Santa? So of course, when I watched the movie, my spiritual radar, when I was like, oh man, hey, if you don't know this about Christianity, if you had to summarize Christianity in just two words, one word would be love, and the other would probably be faith. I mean, if you had to summarize all of Christianity in 2 words, you'd choose love for sure, and then the second word would probably be faith, because all of Christianity is about faith. You never experience God without faith. You'll never have adventures with the God without faith. You'll never even know God without faith. It all takes faith. But the reality is, just like in the movie, there are different people, there are different responses to the message of Jesus. Isn't it true, and probably all of you know somebody in your life who does not believe that Jesus was anything more than just a historical person, right? I mean, I've got friends and relatives that do not believe that he was anything more than just a man who lived for a while on earth and died. A nice man, a good man, but that's all he was. He was just a guy and he died a long time ago. So there are people in this world who are very, very skeptical about anything more than just Jesus being a good man. But then there are people beyond that. I mean, we don't just teach that Jesus was a good man. We teach that he was God who came into the world that he created, who lived and died on a cross and rose again from the dead. And that if you will ask for it, he will put you in his family and forgive you, and he will begin to change your life. So those are pretty big claims. And there are a lot of people who say, okay, I believe that Jesus was a person. I believe he did some pretty cool things. But this claim that he is God and that he cares about what's going on in my life today, now that I'm not so sure about. I mean, there are a lot of Christians, people who believe in Jesus, who wonder if he actually cares about what's happening in their life today. The truth is, some of you are watching online, some of you are here, you, in the back of your mind are wondering that question today, or you know somebody who's like, really? He knows what's happening in my life and he cares about me? Because it just doesn't seem like that could be accurate. And that's a common thing. It's a common thing in our world. So what I want to do is I want to use this series that we're in on Christmas to talk about this. What do you do in those moments when your faith feels a little bit shaken or it takes a hit? And you're wondering, what can I really believe about Jesus? Does he actually care about me? And I want to ask you to open your program and take out the notes that you'll find inside. And of course, welcome to those you're watching online. So glad that you've decided to watch as well. You have these notes as well. If you're watching on YouTube, they're in the comments section. If you're watching on our website, they're obviously right there. So I want to ask you to get them open. And there'll be some things you're going to want to fill in as we go through this today. And I really want to talk about what to do in those moments when your faith feels shaken. And I know that some of you, your faith is fine today. Things are going good for you spiritually. You're doing great. So here's what you need to do. 2 things. First, you know that there's going to be something in your future that's going to hit you and it's going to shake you. So take good notes for that day. Or the other thing is, you have someone in your life who is struggling today, and maybe God brought you here so you could learn some things and talk to them about it. So either of those things are possibilities. So what do? The first thing I want you to do is I want you to learn how to normalize those doubting seasons of your life. Normalize doubt. So in the movie, you have two very different responses. Again, like I've already said, you got the mom's response, which is, I don't believe. This guy is not Santa. He's not Santa. And then you have the daughter's response. So the daughter starts to get to know this man, and slowly she begins to think, hey, what if he really is Santa? What if he is the real Santa? And she goes to see him at the store, and she sits on his lap, and she pulls on his beard, and his beard is real. It's not even fake. So normally the Santas have fake beards, but she begins to the more she gets to know this man, the more she begins to think, maybe, just maybe, he is Santa Claus. Now, here's how faith works. If you don't know this, and if you've never seen this before, there's a ladder. And it's just what I call the faith ladder. So there's faith, but then below faith is doubt, and below that is unbelief. And I've watched people go through this ladder both ways. I've seen people who started out as unbelievers. They didn't believe in Jesus at all, but slowly they got to know what we teach. They've learned about him, and they go to, well, maybe it's true. Maybe he is real. Maybe he's more just a really nice guy. And then the day comes where they're like, I make the decision. I'm putting my faith in Jesus. And they go up to faith. I've seen that many, many times. Many of you, all of us, at one point you didn't believe or you didn't know anything. And you've climbed that ladder. But I have also many, many times watched people go down that ladder. I've watched people go from strong faith to doubt. And I've also watched them go to the point where they don't believe anymore. Right? All of us go up and down in those lives, and that doubt part is really, really challenging. In my lifetime, in 31 years of doing this job, I have watched two major things move people down the ladder. You probably could guess. Number one is always that. Always. The number one thing that puts doubt in our minds is when we go through something painful or we start to suffer. Nothing creates doubt in our minds like pain. Some of you know exactly what I'm talking about. You've been hurt, something went wrong, and now you're struggling with doubts. It's like, really? Is this real? Can I trust him? Is it real? In the movie, that's what happens. The mom does not believe. She's at the lowest rung in that ladder, the unbelief, and it's because she was in a failed marriage. And she really got hurt in that marriage. She trusted someone, and she had faith in him, and he let her down, and so now her faith in anyone is shaken. She got hurt. Some of you know exactly what I'm talking about. You've had seasons of doubt that were created by pain. The other thing that I've seen create a lot of doubt in people's lives are times of big uncertainty, like what we're living through as a nation. A lot of uncertainty in our country right now, and a lot of people wrestling with doubts. And then closely attached to that are times of waiting. When you're waiting and waiting and waiting and waiting for God to do something in your life and it just doesn't seem like he's moving at all, those are big doubt creators. Let me give you an example. I read about a family that lived in Vancouver. And the husband got a job offer in a large West Coast city. So they left rural Canada to move into a huge West Coast city. Now, can you imagine the culture shock of that? We're like moving from Rui to Los Angeles. Just tremendous change, right? And so they were overwhelmed by the change. They left the country that they loved. They left a place where they loved to live to go to this city for this job opportunity. And they were overwhelmed by everything they were experiencing. The change was too much. And slowly they began to be full of anxiety as a couple. Their anxiety quickly led to depression. And then on top of that, they both developed insomnia. So you take sleep away from a stressful thing, what happens? Do you get better or worse? Some of you know exactly what that's like. It's like, oh. Now, they were both Christians, and she said this, and I thought this was so significant. I want to put this up here. I want you to look at this. She said, as the suffering mounted, what I believed to be true about God and life didn't seem to line up with our experience. Have you ever had that? Have you ever had that in your life? Where what you believed to be true about God and life didn't seem to line up with what you were experiencing? the immediate outcome of that is almost always what she says at the end, doubts. Doubts creep in. Now, you know one of the hardest things about doubting is if you're at a point where you're a Christian and all of a sudden you start to wrestle with serious doubts about God and Jesus and life, it is a lonely place to be. Because where are you going to go and talk? Because Christians, we're just supposed to have strong faith and nothing should ever rattle our faith. And so what happens when Christians wrestle with doubt like that is two things they usually feel. They'll feel guilt and they feel alone. They feel guilty. It's like, am I a bad person because I have doubts? The woman said, do my doubts offend God? That's a good question. When you're doubting, is God mad at you? When doubts come in your mind, does he get mad? Does he get embarrassed about you? Look at this slide. These are some of the most important people in the Bible. If you haven't read through the Bible, you may not know all these names, but they are some of the most important. Solomon and David wrote giant chunks of the Bible. And all of them wrestled with doubt at some seasons in their life. Every single one of them. As a matter of fact, that last one is really significant. John the Baptist. So John the Baptist was sent by God into the world before Jesus. So Jesus came, but before Jesus came, John came. And Jesus said that John was sent into the world to prepare the way for Jesus. So what that meant was he ran around telling everybody, hey, the Messiah, the one we've been waiting for thousands of years is finally coming, but you need to get ready because he's almost here. And he told them to repent and clean up their lives, and they were baptized by John in the Jordan River. And then along came Jesus, and the first time John sees Jesus, he's got a crowd around him, he points at Jesus, he goes, look, the Lamb of God who takes away the sin of the world. Immediately, he recognizes Jesus. Jesus comes down to be baptized by John. John's like, no, I don't want to do it. But he says, it has to be this way. And so he baptizes him. He's like, he knows who Jesus is. He is full of faith. Matter of fact, the crowds following John the Baptist start following Jesus. And some of John's disciples are like, hey, we're losing everybody. And John says, fine with me. Jesus, must increase. I got to decrease. It's all about Jesus. So tremendous faith. Well, if you know the story of what happens to John the Baptist, though, he one day decides that Herod's living arrangement isn't really a very nice thing to have because he's doing something that God would consider wrong. And so he tells Herod, the ruler, hey, the living arrangement is wrong. Herod doesn't like that. Kings tend not to like to be told that they're doing something wrong. So Herod throws him in jail. And while he's in jail, all of a sudden, remember what triggers doubt? What moves us down the ladder? Pain, uncertainty, waiting. He's got all of them. He's in jail. And while he's in prison, all of a sudden his faith starts to waver, and his disciples come to visit him one day, and he says, I want you to go find Jesus, and I want you to ask him a question. So his disciples take that question, they go to Jesus, they find Jesus, and they say, John wants to know, are you the Messiah we've been expecting, or should we keep looking for someone else? That's a huge step down the ladder. He went from, behold, the Lamb of God who's going to take away the sins of the world, to, are you the Messiah? That's a big step down the ladder. And how does Jesus respond? This is so important that you understand this. And this is why we can normalize doubt. Jesus answers John's disciples and sends them back. And then he says this, I tell you, of all who have ever lived, none is greater than John. That's what he says after the doubt. After the doubt. Is Jesus now ashamed of him for doubting? Is Jesus embarrassed now? Does Jesus think less of John the Baptist because he said doubts? No. Do you understand what this is saying? You don't need to fear your doubts and bringing your doubts to God. He's not ashamed of your doubts. He's not ashamed of you when you doubt. He's not going to think less of you when you doubt. You don't need to hide your doubts from God. He can handle them. He can handle them. He doesn't change the way he's thinking or talking about John the Baptist just because he has doubts. Matter of fact, what you will learn at some point in your life, if you haven't learned this, oftentimes when you go into that doubt season and you get your doubts answered, your faith on the other side of doubt gets stronger. It's a really important part of our faith. So the first thing I want you to do is just not be lonely, or don't be afraid to have those seasons of doubt. Just normalize doubt. And I want to ask you to think about where are you at in the ladder today? If you're really being honest, When you look at this slide, where are you at on this ladder? Because some of you are not at faith. You don't believe. Or you really don't know what to believe. And it's totally okay for you to be at those other places. God doesn't judge you, look down on you. It's okay to be honest about that. But then you want to move on to the next one. Second thing you want to do is now you want to learn how to challenge your doubts. So once you're in those seasons of doubting, it can be a very confusing, frustrating, painful time. And you don't want to stay there. You want to learn how to challenge those times of doubt. Now, in the movie, as the little girl's faith grows, she just sees more and more things that make her believe, this guy's really Santa. I believe he's Santa. So one of the things is this scene right here. This little girl is brought to Kohl's department store to meet with Santa, and the mom puts her on Santa's lap and says, she's deaf. She can't talk to you, but she just wants to be with you. And so Santa starts speaking sign language to her. And the little girl's watching this from the side, and she's like, oh my goodness. Of course, Santa can speak sign language, right? So this might really be him. And as the evidence grows, she starts becoming more, she moves from unbelief into doubt. She's going up the ladder the more she sees. But of course, her mom is totally at unbelief. Nope, not Santa. Not Santa. But then she says, why don't you challenge it? She said, put out a challenge and ask Santa for something. If he's really Santa, he'll come through for this. And if not, then you'll know. Okay? And so the little girl does that, and she challenges her doubts. She's going up the ladder, so she's at doubt. She went from unbelief up. Now, this is where the movie does not fit spirituality in Christian life, okay? You cannot, the Bible actually talks about, in a negative way, about testing God. Some of you are like, all right, God, I'm at the unbelief level, or I'm at the doubt level. So I'll believe in you if you put $1 million in my savings account by tomorrow, okay? So if you'll do that, then I'll believe in you. So that's called testing God, and he says that's not what you do. That's not the way to do this. He's not going to do that. He's not going to respond to that. So instead, how do we challenge the doubts that we have? Well, there are two things in your notes. First, the very first thing you have to learn to do is, and it's very hard to do the first time you do it, but you have to talk to God about your doubts. You have to tell him the things that you're struggling to believe. Some of you, the most honest thing you could say to God today is, God, I really don't know if you actually do care about me. I don't know. Because what I'm living through just doesn't seem to make sense right now. For others of you, you're like, really? Are you really God? I don't know if I believe that. You came to be among us and live among us? I'm not sure what I believe about that. It is the very first thing. Bring your doubts to God, just like John the Baptist did. He will not judge you, will not condemn you. He will respect your honesty and begin to move closer to you because you're finally being honest. But then the second thing I really want to challenge you to do is look at the evidence. That is actually true. Like the mom is saying, well, look at the evidence in the movie. I completely agree with that. And I want to ask you to flip your notes over on the back and take a look at some of the evidence I put on the back here. So for some of you who are doubters and maybe even unbelievers, there are different resources here. Those 4 websites at the top, that Always Be Ready is a fantastic website to go to that will answer all kinds of questions you may have about faith or God or Jesus. You can check it out for yourself. But the second group down, it says BibleGateway.com. Do you see that? Would you put a star by that one? I really want to ask you to consider signing up for this newsletter. Go to BibleGateway.com/newsletters, and you'll have to scroll down a little bit until you find the one that says Investigating Faith with Lee Strobel. And I want you to, there's a little checkbox, check the box. And start once a week, you'll get an email in your inbox from this man. And Lee Strobel is an investigative reporter. So he investigates things of faith and he writes articles about it. He's written lots and lots of books about it. And there is tremendous and compelling evidence that points in the reasonableness of our faith. And I really want you just to get something coming into your life that will build your faith. You got to build your faith. One of the most important principles I can teach you is whatever you feed is going to grow, right? If you feed your unbelief, that will grow. But if you feed your faith, that'll grow. And there are reasonable reasons to believe in Jesus. Let me give you one of my favorites. Okay, because I really want you to understand that your faith today is not rooted in just, I'm going to take my brain out, I'm going to become a Christian, I'm going to take my brain out of my head, I'm going to take a blind step of faith into the abyss, and that'll be fine. That is not what we have. So we believe that Jesus wasn't just a good historical man, which practically no one denies, but we believe that he was more than that. He was God among us. Is there evidence to believe that Jesus was God among us? What evidence do we have? One of the coolest pieces of evidence is something called fulfilled prophecy. So if you've never read your Bible before, the Bible has two parts to it. The first part of the Bible is called the Old Testament. And it's primarily the story of how God established the nation of Israel. And then there's about a 200-year time gap where nothing is written, and then Jesus comes on the scene, and then we have the New Testament. Like I said, there's about a 200-year gap. The Old Testament wasn't written by one person. It was written by many, many authors over hundreds and hundreds of years. And over again, through all of these different books of the Old Testament, God spoke through his prophets to predict what the Messiah would be like. Okay? So it would be like me standing up here and saying, hey, in 300 years, a ruler is going to come over the nation of the United States, and he's going to be born in Rui, right? And he's going to rise to power. He's going to be called this. And all of these, if I made all these predictions, you would know if I was a false prophet if those things didn't come true. So there are over 300 prophecies all about this one person, the Messiah that was coming. And all of them hundreds of years before Jesus was born. 700 years before Jesus was born in Bethlehem, the prophet predicted that he would be born in the city of Bethlehem. Okay? So that's a very specific prophecy. It's not like we'll say he'll be really good. No, there were specific prophecies. Here's just a few of them. That he would be born of a virgin, they'd be born in Bethlehem. That he would be called the Son of God, that he would be able to heal the sick and the blind and the lame and lepers, that he'd be crucified with criminals. Now notice several of them, these are just 5 of the 300 plus. Notice several of them you have no control over, right? How many of you think you could control who the Romans crucify you between? Right? No control over that. You have no control. None of you chose the city you were born in, right? So a mathematician named Dr. Peter Stoner, in the 1960s, calculated what's the likelihood that one human being could fulfill even 8 of these more than 300 Old Testament prophecies. Just one person fulfill even, there's just 5. What's the likelihood? Mathematically, the number is this. It's 1 with 10 to the 17th power. It's that number. So it's an enormous number. It's 10 to the 17th power. So again, we don't understand how big a number is like that. And so he said, well, here's how you think of it. So take the state of Wisconsin. If you took the state of Wisconsin and you buried it 8 feet deep in silver dollars, 8 feet deep over every square inch of Wisconsin, okay? And then you blindfolded one person. Let's say we blindfolded you, and we dropped you in the middle of the state of Wisconsin. And somewhere in this pile of silver dollars, we took one silver dollar and we put a red X on it. And we hid it somewhere in the entire state of Wisconsin in a pile 8 feet deep. I'm 6 feet deep, so add a couple more feet to me. That's how deep the pile is. You take one silver dollar covering the entire state of Wisconsin 8 feet deep. You put one X on it, you hide it somewhere, blindfold one person and say, walk anywhere you want in Wisconsin. You know how long it can take you to walk from here to Milwaukee, let alone Door County? But you can walk anywhere you want. So you walk anywhere. And at one point, you're blindfolded. You stop and you start digging down in that 8-foot tall pile and you pull the one. What's the likelihood you're going to pull the one out with the one red X? Do you get how ridiculous this is? It's ridiculous. And that's one person fulfilling 8 of the prophecies, and there are over 300 prophecies. The actual mathematical probability that a human being could have fulfilled all 300 prophecies is 1. It's 10 to the 152 zeros. It's a number so big, I just didn't want to type 152 zeros on that screen. So it's like it is a mathematical impossibility, and yet he did. He is who he said he is. He is who he said he is. You are not living by blind faith. There is evidence that points compellingly in the direction of belief, being reasonable. That's who came 2,000 years ago. It was God among us. And you can believe in that. So, again, the question comes down to what are the doubts that you have in your mind? And are you doing anything to challenge those doubts? If you do nothing else today, I sure hope you sign up for that newsletter. Get that newsletter, even if all you do is put it in a folder in your inbox that says questions about God, and just read a couple of them a year. Your faith will grow. Because the evidence is overwhelming in the direction of belief in Jesus. But that's not all. And I changed this third one. So you see, move forward. You can just scribble out those first 3 words under number 3. Move forward with, scribble that out. It's really this. Ultimately, to really experience God, you're going to have to take a step of faith. You're going to have to learn how to take a step of faith. So in the movie, the whole thing comes down to, at one point, one of Cole's competitors, this evil man, wants to ruin Santa Claus's reputation because he's so popular. And Cole's is selling too much stuff. So they set this scene up, and Santa is arrested, and then there's this big trial, and the lawyer's trying to prove that this man actually is Santa Claus. And the question is, what do you believe? Do you believe he is or don't you? And so people take sides. I believe, I don't believe. What do you believe? Rebecca believes, and it's just, which again, why I love the movie. What do you believe? We say that Jesus is God among us. And there is compelling evidence that says, yep, he's more than just a nice historical figure. Because it's mathematically impossible to believe that one person could have fulfilled 300 plus prophecies. It's impossible. But God can. God could do that. And that's what happened. And faith is just the most important thing. Like I said, one of the most important things for us as Christians. The Bible says it is impossible to please God without faith. Without faith, you will never know God and you will never experience God. And people sometimes really hate that sentence. They're like, no, I want to be totally convinced before I do anything. It's like, are you kidding me? You ever fly in a plane? You ever been on a plane? Right? You ever flown somewhere? It's like, did you understand everything about the workings of a jet engine before you got on that plane? So if I don't understand everything about a jet engine, I'm not getting on a plane. Did you understand everything about how planes fly through the air? How they fly? They don't fly like this, but how they go through the air, right? You didn't understand anything about it. You just got on a plane and you were nervous, right? You ever been nervous to fly? I flew 1 year after 9/11. Oh man, was I nervous. You know what happened? Nothing. I took the tiny little faith that I had, and I got on the plane and flew to California and flew back and nothing happened. You use faith all the time. You used faith to get here, because I don't think any of you walked. I'm pretty sure you got in a car and drove. And you drove, some of you, faster than 55 miles an hour getting here. Much faster. And you're passing people going the same or even faster like this, and they were just a few inches away, and you never even thought about it, did you? You never even thought about it. You just go. You don't understand how most of you don't understand how a combustion engine works. You just get in and drive. Unless you forget to put gas in it, then it doesn't go. But I mean, you take it for granted that person coming towards you is sober and awake, and you don't even think about it. We take things on faith all the time, and Jesus is saying, listen, if you would, just put a little of that faith in me, and here's what happens. Jesus said, I'll tell you the truth. If you had faith as small, even as a mustard seed, you could say to this mountain, move from here to there, and it would move, and nothing would be impossible. It's so important that you get that phrase that I've highlighted in blue. You do not need big faith to encounter a big God. It's so important you understand that. You just need the smallest amount of faith and you will experience and encounter God. That's all it takes, the smallest amount of faith. In the Bible, when Jesus was here, you had people at different levels of faith. There was one story in the Bible where this Roman centurion comes to Jesus one day and he says, my servant is ill. Would you come and heal him? And so Jesus is ready to leave and go heal him. He says, oh, wait, all you have to do, he says, is you're a man of authority. He said, I'm a man of authority. If I tell my soldiers to go, they go. If I tell them to come, they come. You have that same authority. All you have to do is say the word and my servant will be healed. So he believed that Jesus had so much power that he could heal his servant from a distance without ever touching him. Do you know how many long distance healings had taken place in Jesus' ministry to that point? None. But he believed it. And Jesus, it's the only time in the Bible where Jesus was amazed in a positive way. He was amazed at this Roman centurion's faith. He's like, wow. He said, I haven't found faith like this in all of Israel. It's a Roman soldier. And he says, go back home. That guy's fine. He goes back home. The servant's fine. Jesus healed him from a distance because he is God and he can do anything. Nothing is impossible for him. But then you also have another story not long after the Roman centurion. This dad has a son who's sick and he comes to Jesus and he's like, heal him if you can. So his faith is like, oh, that big, tiny little faith. And Jesus says, he said, all things are possible if you believe. He's like, yeah, I do believe, but help my unbelief. It's like, I just have this little bit of faith. And you know what Jesus did for that guy's son? He healed him. He had just a little speck of faith. He had great faith. And here's the point. This is so important that you get this. These examples don't teach that God always answers according to the strength of your faith. Rather, in his wisdom, he responds to any degree of faith. You don't have to have great faith to have experiences with God and adventures with God. You have to have any faith. And if you'll just have a little bit of faith and you'll aim that faith at God, no matter what you're going through, you'll experience God. So I got permission to tell this next story. I've got some good friends who are going through some real adversity. A couple of weeks ago, he got fired. So that's not a very nice Christmas present, right? You get fired from your job, you've got a family, you've got a house, you've got a mortgage, you've got expenses, and now you have no job. And all of a sudden, you all know what they were feeling. Now, thankfully, they're really, really close to me, and so I was talking to them right after the incident happened. I was talking to them as a couple on the phone, and they're strong Christians, and so, they're at that faith level, but these are the situations that create doubt, right? It's like, really, God? Merry Christmas to me. It's like, you say that you care about me, you let me get fired right before Christmas? How am I going to pay my mortgage? How am I going to pay my bills? All of a sudden, doubt enters, right? And so we had a conversation on the phone, and I said, like Jesus said, if you have any amount of faith, any degree of faith, it's just that sentence. It's any amount of faith at all. I said, this is the time to put a little bit of your faith in Jesus. And I said, here's what I'm challenging you to pray. I said, would you just pray and say to God, God, I know that you promise that you'll be working in the middle of this and that you're already at work. So before I even see what you're doing, I just want to say thank you. I want to thank you that you're already at work in the middle of this situation. Now, when you thank God before you see anything, that's faith. If you thank God after he does it, that's gratitude. So thanking him before he does anything, that's faith. And I have a good enough relationship with him that I could say that to him. And the wife pushed back a little bit. It's like, really? That's what I'm supposed to do in the middle of this? So much uncertainty and fear. I'm supposed to thank him that he's already at work? Does it take faith to thank God before you see God do anything? It takes a lot of faith. But she did, and they did. To their credit, as a couple, they began to say to God, God, no idea how we're going to make it. This hurts. It's not good. Doesn't feel good. But you promise that you're working. You'll meet our needs. So before we even see how, we want to say thank you. Thank you that you will. So it's been 2 weeks. And it has been a regular occurrence over these last 2 weeks that I've gotten updates about what God's doing. After he lost his job, other people found out about it and started offering him opportunities to work. When those paychecks come in, he will have made more in this month than what he gave up. Yesterday, some people showed up at his house gave him a $150 gift card to Walmart. What a lucky break. What a coincidence. I'm just lucky, right? No, our God, when he sees, what's the phrase? Any degree of faith. You get to experience God. And they're having experiences with God. They're going to reshape their faith. The next time they have a crisis, they'll be able to go back to this and say, no, look how God was with us then. He'll be with us now. We'll make it through this test because he was with us during that last test. I once had a situation in my own life where financially had to take a huge pay cut. I knew I couldn't financially make my budget work with the pay cut I was about to take. So I didn't know what to do, so I opened up a page in my notebook, and at the top I wrote, God provides. And it was a step of faith. Took the pay cut, and then I just said, God, every time you do something, while this income is gone and I can't make ends meet, I'm going to write it here. 6 months, that pay was gone. By the time my pay was restored, the page was full, and God had given in unexpected ways more than I'd given up. Because God responds to any degree of faith. And some of you are in the middle of some painful, scary, uncertain things today. You have some things that really hurt. And what you really, really, really need is an experience with this God of love. And all it takes is any degree of faith. I'd say to you today what I said to that couple on the phone 2 weeks ago. Just say to him, this hurts, I don't like it, but you promised to bring good out of this. And you promised that you're already at work, so before I see what you're even going to do, thank you. And then open up a page in a notebook so that you can record what God does. Because he cannot lie. So here's what I want you to know. I want you to know as we finish, doubt is normal. You're going to have seasons of doubt. And God wants to hear about the doubts that you have. It's totally fine to talk to God about your doubts. He's not going to think less of you. I also want you to know, for those of you who are at the faith level, you do not have a check your brain at the door faith. You have a faith that is rooted in evidence that is overwhelming. I mean, I only gave you one example today. If you go to those websites, you're going to see so many others. What I really want you to do, too, is talk to God about any doubts you have. At least sign up for that newsletter. At least sign up for that newsletter. And at least start to look at what the evidence is so that you can start to build your faith. And I really want to encourage all of you who are hurting here today and facing uncertainty today to take one step of faith closer to God before you leave. I really want you silently to say to God, you promise that you're working, and you promise to bring good out of this, so I can't see how. But before I see how, I'm going to take it on faith that it's true, and I'm going to ask. And I'm going to say thank you. Thank you. You're already at work in this situation. Let me have you bow your heads as we finish. If you're truly at the unbelief level, and that's the part of the ladder you're at today, then I challenge you to pray that what we call the skeptic's prayer and say, God, I don't know if you're there, but if you are, I do want to know you. I don't want to be wrong about this. If you're really there, then show me. I want to know if I'm right or wrong on this. Some of you are at that doubting phase. You don't know what to believe about this Jesus, and I'm telling you, he is real. He has changed my life. He's been with me since the day I put my faith in him. And if you will let him, he will come into your life. He will save you. He will make his home inside of you. He'll adopt you into his family, and on with the list of incredible things he wants to give. And he's already done everything so this relationship is possible. He died on the cross for our unloving words and thoughts. And he rose again, and if you will let this living God into your life, he will begin to do his work inside of you. With your head bowed, you can say something like this in your heart to him. Say, Jesus, I'm turning to you today. I feel like I have a small amount of faith, but I'm putting it in you. Please forgive me. Please start a new relationship today. I want to get to know you. In Jesus' name, amen. Now, as we finish up, I want to ask all of you, if you wouldn't mind, get this little card out of your program. Even if you're a regular tender, I know I ask you to do it every week. Just put your name down so we know that you're here. But if you prayed today and asked for his gift of forgiveness or renewed your commitment, check one of these boxes and let us know what you've done. If you have some big things that you want us to pray about, would you put it here? We have a team of people that will pray for you, and we'll pray for you. And if you have other comments you want to make, we'd love to have those here as well. And then just drop it in one of the 2 offering boxes back on the back wall. We hope that you'll all be able to join us this next week for our Christmas Eve service. Don't forget, it's 4 o'clock. So Merry Christmas. Have a great week, everybody.